All right, everybody. So thanks for joining us today. We got Matt from Greenlight Podcast here. He filled in for me real quick. He did me a real solid because Trophy Smack they backed out on me all of a sudden, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do. And I was going through my text messages and I seen Matt's name and I said, I'm going to write him and see if he'll do this real quick. So thank you so much, man, for coming in short notice and helping me out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. I'm happy they canceled. I'm excited to be here on the Greenlight Pod. We deal with booking guests all the time, and I know all too well the feeling when it falls through right at the end. So I'm happy to pay it forward a little bit, like some guests have for us.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. So kind of tell, because I know some of the listeners aren't going to know what Greenlight Podcast is, or
Sure.
kind of fill them in on what Greenlight Podcast is and who all it involves and what you guys do over there.
Yeah, so basically we're based in Charlottesville, Virginia. We got an operation there that's headed by Chris Long, who used to play in the NFL, played for the Rams, Patriots, and Eagles, and won a couple Super Bowls. After he retired in 2018, started basically his own podcast, his own media company, and the Greenlight Podcast, where we basically talk about football throughout football season and talk about whatever we want in the football off season, which is about half the year. It's gotten pretty popular, and as it's grown, we've gotten more and more people on our team, more producers, more co-hosts. So some of the guys that I actually grew up with, like Chris and his co-host Macon, are the main co-hosts. And then we have Kyle Long, who played for the Chicago Bears, and also Nate Collins, who played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's a fun time. We basically run 3 shows a week during football season and talk about everything NFL and college football. But we like to have a lot of fun. We like to do things here in Virginia, represent Virginia well. We can very often be found out on the James River all together, kayaking, having fun outside. So it's a great show. I'd urge everybody to listen to it. Greenlight Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome, man. That sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like you guys are just a bunch of buddies just hanging out, having a good time, talking football, and then on the off season, y'all just do whatever pleases y'all's fancy, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm happy to have football season back. In the off season, you're always trying to think of content, things to talk about. Whether there's news or not, there's going to be a show on Tuesday and Thursday, so we got to have something to talk about. So having the NFL back is good. It gives us a little bit of an anchor, but I like the off season because we get to do some fun, off the wall stuff like this pumpkin thing we've been talking about.
Yeah. So that's a great segue right into it. So what are you guys looking to do with a giant pumpkin?
All right. So it's been kind of a long, strange trip, but basically, we were in the off season period about almost a year and a half now. And I'm just scrolling through news as I will every day just to try to find something to talk about. And I see this world record achievement by this guy. His name's Dwayne Hansen. He set the record for longest river float in a pumpkin while paddling. And he did it in the Missouri River in about a 650-pound pumpkin that had been carved out. Took him, I believe, about 13 hours. And he went almost 40 miles, setting the record. So we talked about it on the show, and Chris is just a guy who's so passionate about the river. When we're planning our schedule, a lot of what we do is based around when we can get out to the river and actually get some time outside. And as soon as he heard about that record and we talked about it, he was like, I want to break it. And my job as the producer there is to kind of make things happen, more or less, sometimes more successfully than others. But it became this journey of trying to find out about how to get a giant pumpkin, how to possibly navigate a river, how to carve this thing. And from there, I just kind of went and started learning about the giant growers and have met some farmers here in Virginia that have been really cool and taught me a lot. And I'm super interested in the community. It seems so friendly, all this trading of seeds, trading of information, all this information on Facebook. It's super cool. And just going out and getting to meet some of these guys, I don't know, blown away by the effort
Right.
that they put into it and the seriousness with which they compete. Like they're really trying. They're putting in hours and hours of work, not doing it for the money at all. They're losing money with all of the resources that they have to pour into this, and I just love it. It's been a ton of fun getting to know these guys, and I'm really looking forward to the Virginia State Fair, where a bunch of the different guys that I've been talking to are bringing their pumpkins to the weigh off, and have a couple agreements with a few different farmers for a couple pumpkins that we're going to take and try to set this record.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. So here, I got a couple questions because I think this is very interesting, because I seen when that record got broke, and I'd mentioned to my wife, I was like, hey, you know what? I could do that. And immediately when I said that, she said no. And I'm like, come on, man. I grow the pumpkin. I can carve it. I can put it in the river and float down the Kanawha River. I can make it like forever down that river, right? And she was like, no, you ain't doing it. So I was like, okay, whatever. But then whenever, we come in contact with you and stuff, I immediately had questions. And one of the questions I wanted to ask is, so I've had to deal with Guinness for some of my records. Okay. Yeah. Have you got to deal with them yet? What are the requirements to float down this river and be able to break this record?
They're pretty strict. A lot of it is based on documentation. So for this journey that we estimate will take something like 17 hours, 18 hours, depending on a lot of factors. It's basically like you have to have a constant video feed. And you have to have quote unquote unbiased witnesses. Like it's hard to find somebody who's completely unbiased that doesn't know you at all, but you have to have somebody who will, say in writing and on their honor that they witnessed the event and it was all for real and it wasn't manufactured. And then there's also a lot of stuff that Guinness says in there about being able to use your name, image, and likeness for their own purposes, which, I have a few concerns with potentially, but I guess if they want to use it, that's probably because we set the record. I haven't had any problems with them yet. I am nervous about when the actual execution goes through, if their adjudicator will say it counted, but I've followed all the steps rigorously through their application process, and it's been relatively straightforward. So hopefully we're able to document everything correctly, and Chris can get the recognition he deserves from them.
That'd be great. So another question I have is it a constant float? Is he allowed to come and get a drink and go back? As long as he doesn't exit the pumpkin, can he come to the bank, get a drink, and then go back out? I mean, there's so many different things I'm sitting here trying to figure out. And
like going to the bathroom.
Right. Exactly. Like going to the bathroom and things,
Yeah. My understanding of it is that you can stop. But I need to go through all the language of it to make sure of that.
Okay.
And whether you can stop or not, I know Chris really, really well. He is the most determined individual. It does not matter what is in front of him. He will run through it like a brick wall. So if he has to pee his pants, he'll do it. And you're allowed to have, like Dwayne Hansen, who set the record, he was sitting on a cooler basically. So he had all of the water and everything that he needed, food, etc., right near him.
Okay.
Also, our plan is to have at least one, and probably more than that, like boats right nearby, both like going in front, checking out the rapids, and then also that it will have cameras looking back at him. Right. So I think we'll be able to keep supplies and provisions, things of that nature, in those boats, and then like pass them over.
Okay. So there's going to be rapids then. It's not going to be a deep, because like here's my other thing with this. So like when I mentioned it to my wife, the Kanawha River is a very deep, long river here in West Virginia. And as long as I got through the Marmet locks, I have got a straight stretch from there all the way to the Ohio. And then I could potentially hit the Ohio and go down and don't really have to worry about any rapids for that long stretch. Or I could hit 40 plus miles there without any rapids. So he's going to have rapids to deal with. How is he looking to, are you allowed are you allowed to put buoys on this pumpkin any, or is he going to have to?
No, you can't
paddle through it?
artificial. You can't, and like I should point out right now, there's a chance of failure. Like the pumpkin could break on some rocks. Like we don't, obviously we don't
Right.
think that success is assured, but well, I'm really lucky because we're in Charlottesville and we reached out to the University of Virginia to this like team. They have this concrete canoe building engineering team, and there's all these really smart kids.
Okay.
And I told them about the project, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll volunteer. We want to work on it." And basically, have had like a task force, more or less. And what they did was they went through and they assessed all these various rivers, all these different possibilities for us to float. And we looked at some of the ones in West Virginia, the one that you're talking about. And what we really wanted to do was the James River in Virginia, but it just wasn't going to be possible because you would have to do a Class 2 rapids, which we felt like there was good. Yeah, it felt like there was too high of a chance of the pumpkin cracking, essentially. And a lot of this depends on like the water level. So if there's been certain levels of rain, you're in a much better situation than if the water's lower.
Right.
But what they found was that the best options was basically two. There was the Missouri River, which is where Hansen did it because that would have no rapids and be relatively fast. That was an option for us that we looked at. And then the other option was the Delaware River, starting in Pennsylvania and going down into New Jersey. And we found that there shouldn't be anything above like a very, very low level Class 1. And it's extremely wide, extremely deep in the middle. It's not quite as fast as the Missouri, but it should be a relatively steady ride according to the information that we have.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Now, let's say, pray to God it don't happen, but let's say it gets in the rapid and flips over. Pumpkin doesn't break. He gets out of there. Are you guys allowed to flip it back over, bail the water out, and continue on?
I don't think so. My understanding of it is that like if it capsizes, then it's no longer continuous.
Okay.
So
you
I think the engineering of the boat is one of the most critical things, and kind of like assessing the size of the pumpkin so that we can make sure that it, and not just the size, but like the proportions of the pumpkin so that we can make sure it's more seaworthy, for lack of a better term.
Right. So how much do you know about Hansen's pumpkin and like weight, size, any of that information?
Basically, I know it was about 650 pounds. I at one point knew the name of the seed that, like the parent seed, but I can't remember that at this time. One thing that's cool about getting into the giant pumpkin community is there's also a lot of pumpkin boaters out there. So the general rule of thumb is that your giant pumpkin should be about 3 or 3.5 times the weight of the individual that would be inside of it. And so, if you're 150, 200 pounds, something like 600 pounds is great. Chris is a lot bigger, former NFL player, so he's over 250. So we're looking for something, in the 800 to 1,000 range.
Right.
Yeah, and it's crazy how I got some of the information from different people. I was actually just online. One of our fans posted a picture of his friend's giant pumpkin. And this is a guy that like interacts with us all the time. And I was kind of in the market for a giant pumpkin because the first farmer I was talking to, his stopped growing after about 350 pounds.
Right.
And so I DM'd this guy, and he connected me to his friend Serene. And then she basically knows all the pumpkin farmers everywhere. And it was really cool to get that information. She connected me with some guys that had made some boats. But she also gave me one piece of information that was a little bit unnerving, which was that apparently other people are trying to break this record too. So currently it stands at 39.8 miles. I'm not going to say exactly the distance that we're planning to go, just in case there's anybody out there that wants to go like 1 mile further. But we're going to try to not just beat the record. We're going to beat it by a good amount.
Right. And that, anytime that you go for a record, because I hold 18 state records right now, and I'm looking to get more of them by the end of the season.
Nice.
I got 2 world records. Anytime that you beat a record.
What world records you got?
So I got the butternut squash world record, and I got a world record for the most giant varieties grown in a single season.
Awesome.
I crushed it. I think it was like 28, and I beat it by 10 or something like that.
Man, the other day I was over at my buddy Paul's house, farmer, giant grower, and he has some long gourds that are unbelievably big.
Right. They're like long gourds. I got the state record for that at 104 3/4 inches.
Brother, it's going down.
Yeah. Like they're crazy fun to grow. Like mine wouldn't grow this year because it was just so cool here in West Virginia. Nothing, gourds just was not growing. But next year, I mean, I'm looking to do 120 plus, any record that I beat, even if it's my own record, I look to crush my own. Like last year I had a state record of 19 pounds and so many ounces for the rutabaga, right? This year I crushed it with 31 pounds, and I've got another one out there that's probably even bigger than that right now. Nice. So I mean, like that's the goal. Like you don't want to just beat the world record, or you don't want to just beat the state record. You want to put it in a position to where somebody's going to have to really work hard to beat that record. You know what I mean? It's not just, I want it to stand for a single season. I want it to stand for as long as possible, right? So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are going to try to make it to where somebody's going to have to float down the Missouri from the beginning to the end. You know what I mean? And good for you guys, because that's what records are to do. You're supposed to make them to where people have to work hard to beat it.
And we welcome the competition. If we set this record and somebody goes out and beats us, then great. We got something to do next summer.
Absolutely. And, a bunch of people who's got pumpkins now that can supply them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's going to be awesome. So filming, I know you said you're going to have to film this whole thing. So what is that going to look like? Do you guys know? You got any idea yet?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate to work with this guy, Reed, that just runs all of our audio and video for Greenlight. And we've done a bunch of like remote different pieces here and there. Like we've gone to Philadelphia, done things on the docks, done things at people's houses. So we've got a remote setup, and we've actually filmed ourselves on the James River a bunch, where we have an army of GoPros. We have all the different like clips and things of this nature. And we got, we have all of the camera equipment. We have all the waterproof camera equipment because of that. So we're pretty well set up. It's just a matter of getting the pumpkin itself set up with cameras, which I definitely still need to think about how we do that exactly.
I got a couple suggestions for that, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. So like if it was me and I'm going to float down this pumpkin, right? Of course, you're not going to be able to use your typical mounting hardware, right? Like because like if you go to like mount like one of the mounts with screws, you're automatically it'll just pull right out, right? Like the first, But if I had to do it, I think what I would do is I would take the mounting hardware, and then I would fabricate something to go inside, say you got the GoPros that have the circular mount, right? And there's like 3 holes for bolts, right? So I think what I would do is I would like put that on there, punch mark the holes with like permanent ink marker. Then I would take that same one, go inside and take some like 3/4 inch plywood, draw a template of it, but just make it like 2 times bigger, right?
Right.
But when I draw the template, mark my holes for the bolts, right? And then drill those out, put those inside the pumpkin, have long bolts that would reach through the pumpkin and through that plywood, and then bolt it up that way. I think that's how I would go about it. But
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, because it would be very hard to rip a 8 to 12 inch chunk of pumpkin out if you've got something that big around on the back side of it.
And that's what I keep going back to is that wall is thick, 8 to 12 inches.
Right, exactly. The bottom is what you're going to have to worry about. And just if it was me, the tops and the sides are really good. I think if I were to do it, I would probably flip it up.
Yeah.
Cut the bottom out because the bottom's the thinnest part on the pumpkin generally, right?
Absolutely.
That's where I would go set in, and then I would have the top and the bottom set, or the top and the sides rather, setting in the water.
And it gives you a natural carving area more so than the other way, just because the way that most of the guys grow it, like if it's on a pallet or whatever, it's gonna flatten out at that part.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you got that round kind of boat shape coming around the side, so it makes sense to me in my mind. I mean, you got the engineers and stuff from UVA working on it, so I'm sure them guys have got it, pretty worked out. But that just would make sense to me. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see this. So you guys are going to have to float the entire time with him, right? How is the crew think? Like, what are you guys thinking about this?
I'm thinking I'm going to be in the motorboat.
Okay, you're going to be in the motorboat.
No, I don't know. I'm a little nervous about kayaking 19 hours. To be honest, I mean, we do 5 and 6 hour trips all the time, but it could be a long time. The harder thing to figure out is like when to start.
Right.
Like, let's say it takes 16 to 21 hours, something in that range. Like, you're not going to have daylight for that whole time. So figuring out how to do things at night, that's probably my biggest fear.
I think as long as I was through the rapids in the daylight, I think that would, after that, I don't really think it would be an issue for me. They got some very, very powerful, headlamps now. So, I mean, you can see forever with those. Is he allowed to paddle this thing, or does he have to naturally?
No, he can paddle, and that's my biggest reason for optimism that it'll happen quickly, because I know him. He's just going to paddle. He's just going to keep going.
Right.
And I think that'll speed us up considerably.
That'll be great. That'll be really good, because I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, well, if he's got to float naturally, he better hope that the water level's up a little bit that day and kind of pushes him down the river a little faster.
Yeah, if he had to float naturally, we would have done the Missouri, I think, just because this one's going to require some paddle speed.
Okay. So have you guys talked about that? Is he going to have just one paddle going back and forth, or is he going to have like a double, like an actual kayak paddle? Have you guys thought about that?
The plan is for a double. Once we start carving it, and then we can look at kind of like the ergonomics of it, for lack of a better term, just in terms of like maximizing his ability to paddle efficiently, we'll see what makes the most sense. But I think it'll be a double.
Okay. So are you guys going to have any test pumpkins and kind of like test it out and see what you're like, get familiar with it? Or are you guys just going to toss him in one and say, hey, good luck, buddy, here you go?
What we're hoping to do is get 2, maybe 3 pumpkins and give ourselves some room for error in a bunch of different ways. Like, one way would be the transportation. What if we hit a bump and the thing breaks, and then we're out of luck? Right. Another one is the carving. What if we make a mistake and it's no longer seaworthy in the way that we want it to be? And then, I mean, those are really my big 2. And then what we'd like to be able to do ideally is get 2 or 3 pumpkins down there, carve the first one, test it in our local river, make sure it's seaworthy. And then if that is beautiful, like no adjustments needed, carve another one just like it, bring them both up to Pennsylvania, choose the one that we like the most and feel the best about, and go with that. And then if the first test goes badly for whatever reason, like, quickly make our adjustments and figure out what went wrong to fix it with the second one.
Right. So are you guys, because I'm sitting here thinking about this and I'm like, whoa, you're going to carve it and then transport it. How many hours are you guys going to transport that after you've carved them?
I'm hoping to do it the next day.
Yeah, but I mean, like how many hours is that?
Oh, sorry. It's not too bad. It's about 4.
Okay, that ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. Because I'm sitting here thinking, man, I know these things intact crack, and I'm like, if you start cutting on them and carving, then I'm like, you're moving it, you've weakened it some. And I mean, like, that would be high anxiety. Like, are you guys going to maybe take one up there and carve it, maybe, instead of, like, if you get 3, would you carve 2? And then in case either one of them wrecked, you would have that one still intact that you could carve?
Depends on our ability to carve, like what equipment exactly we would need, if we'd be able to do that up there or not. I'm not sure. One reason for choosing the Delaware was that it's closer, so it's only about 4 hours. We're not like 100% married to the date that we do it. So if we carve a couple pumpkins and it doesn't work at first and we still have one more, we could go back, try it again. But there is a timeliness factor to consider. And one of my favorite things about this whole process has been just gaining knowledge from all these farmers. Right. And every single one that I've talked to has been like, you better prepare for something to go wrong, because like they'll break, all these different things that can happen. So I want to give us as many contingencies as possible to try to make it work.
Awesome. So if like, are you guys the ones that's going to carve it yourselves, or do you guys got somebody that's going to carve it?
So we have the engineers that have the equipment that we need to carve it.
Okay.
They're incredibly nice kids. I'm not sure if they have the physical tools needed to get through that 8 to 12 inch wall, but
Right.
luckily a bunch of the guys that I work with played in the NFL, and I think they can cut it.
Okay.
So my buddy Nate, who's he played defensive tackle for the Jaguars, I think he'll be able to make the cuts if there's a physical concern.
Right.
But the engineers are planning to tell us exactly where to cut, and they have pretty detailed plans for how they plan to do it.
Okay, cool. Because I'm sitting here thinking, you know, like I cut pumpkins all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all the time, and I can go out there and I can be really precise when I want to be. But most of the time, I take a really long saw, right?
Yep.
And I just stick it in. At first, I take a machete, put it in to make that initial cut into it, and then I take my saw and cut out what I want to cut out with that. That usually works really well. I've tried the Sawzall, and the Sawzall works when it's not really thick,
Mm-hmm.
but good luck on finding a really long blade. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
some of these pumpkins, depending on how, I mean, I've seen them over 12 inches thick. You know, I mean, some of them can get very, very thick. So, you know, I was wondering with you what you guys were planning on. So, have you thought about, like, have the kids, you know, said which direction like you would float it? Would it be the blossom end first or the stem end first? Like, is there any directional that you guys have thought about or any of that?
You know, that's something we haven't discussed as much. Based on my thinking, it would probably be the stem end first, just because that's stronger, and if you hit some oncoming traffic,
yep, that's kind of what
chance of surviving. So I think that would be the plan. I think what their plan is to sort of like, once we've emptied it out, you know, and of course like gathered the super valuable seeds and make sure that those get back out into the community, then they'll kind of do like an assessment of the dimensions that they're working with, and then sort of make decisions based on that assessment.
Right. Okay. Because I mean, like I said, I was sitting here thinking, I was like, you know, stem end, super, super thick. It's usually as thick as the side walls and the top.
Yeah.
But the blossom end is usually what splits on us, you know.
Yep.
And
no, I was with a farmer the other day, and he showed me a blossom that split that he had patched in a certain way, and it seemed to be holding. But yeah, it's super delicate.
Right. Is there any modifications that you're allowed to make to this pumpkin? I mean,
other than cutting it, no. I mean, like, you can make whatever cuts that you want as long as it still consists of a pumpkin shell.
Right.
And it's technically a pumpkin boat, but you can't like add little buoys to the outside. You can't add a little motor to the back as much as we might like to.
You're not allowed to put wax on the pumpkin, anything like that?
That is one thing that I believe we can do and are planning to do.
Okay. Because I was sitting here thinking, you know, wax would be a tremendous help.
Yeah, I think I was talking to the kids. They were talking about like some type of polymer. I'm not sure exactly.
Yep. Oh, I was sitting here thinking of several different things that I would probably want to try to use if I was allowed to modify it in that way. Just for, you know, the you know, simple fact of trying to shed that water. You know, pumpkins are generally very smooth. The only time they're not is when they're cantalouped real bad.
Yep.
And when they're cantalouped real bad, it seems like they can absorb water, right? But when they're really smooth and shiny, it seems like they repel water really good, almost like they do have a natural, I can't remember the term for it, but if you, like, I go out there and I literally take a terry cloth to mine almost every day, fluff it, right? And you can see little swirl marks in it, just like you've waxed it. That's how I keep my really pretty ones really pretty. I go out there and polish them, but there's these little fine hairs that are not, I don't know that it's hairs, but it's kind of like how it was described to me, is like these little fine hairs that are all over that pumpkin. And when you do that, you're essentially buffing it. And you can't do that with the cantaloupe ones.
That's interesting. You mentioned beautiful pumpkins. Are you gonna enter any into the like most beautiful pumpkin contest?
I did that last year.
It's
We
fairly
won't.
subjective.
Yeah, it is very subjective. We can talk about that at the state fair. That is a very how would you put it, touchy subject with me because
Gotcha.
yeah. So we won't. We'll talk about it at a later date. But
Didn't
some
mean
of
to
these
push the wrong
things.
button.
Yeah, well, not for me, not for me personally. I'm the kind of guy like, you know, I do this because I love it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like solely because I love it. If I beat a record, if I get a Howard Gill Award, which is at the GPC events, or if I put a pumpkin in for the prettiest pumpkin in the world contest, I get it. Okay, great. If I don't, it's no big deal to me.
Hmm.
But there are those who don't see it that way. And so as soon as you try to creep up on, getting that, they
Hmm.
get very defensive, very agitated and stuff. So that kind of happened to me last year. I was nipping at the heels of first place with one of mine.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and it just turned into a really ugly mess to where I said, you know what? You guys can pull all three of my pumpkins out of the contest if you want. I don't care. I'm not trying to start no trouble. I don't want no drama,
Hmm.
and so yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
it makes sense. People care a lot about it when you put that much work, time, and effort and love into it.
yeah. I mean, they do, but I'm just not. I'm not that guy. I can go out
Yeah.
here and do all this, have some fun, and at the end of the day, if you beat me, we're still going to be friends. But some of these guys, if you beat them, yeah, good luck being friends with them afterward. They're kind of like, no, no, thank you. So, but but I mean, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and I think that you guys doing this is going to bring a surge in pumpkin growing. It's one thing for Hanson to have broke it last year, right? I mean, that's great. I applaud him for that, but there's it really didn't show much of the giant community. You know what I mean? Like where you got that pumpkin from, etc. And you guys having the platform that you all do, doing the outreach that you guys do, you guys can really shed some light on the giant growing community and bring new people to it, and that's really
Yeah.
exciting.
And when we eventually, make this video documenting everything and release it to the public, it's not going to start at the world record attempt. It's going to start over a year ago with us meeting with pumpkin farmers and learning about this whole process. So I think you're right, because when people watch the footage that we have and that we hope to get a lot more of with guys like yourself and stuff at the state fair, I think they're going to be really interested. Like, you don't have to be somebody that's part of the giant grower community
Right,
to see something beautiful about the passion that these people put into it.
right.
And like, I like competition. It's cool that like people are competing. Yeah, I mean, it's great. I love it. And we've met some really interesting characters that I think will pop.
That's going to be a lot of fun, man. I am excited to see everything that you guys got going on with this. Um, are you guys worried about anybody finding out the day that you guys go and being like a lot of paparazzi trying to film the river and all that stuff? I mean, I know I would be. Are you guys worried about that, or is it kind of
I
like we
think,
go to the river all the time?
uh, I mean, like, we live in a small town where, like, not me, but the dudes that I do the show with are like relatively famous. So, like, we're kind of used to that a little bit.
Right,
But the place that we're going is full of Eagles fans, and Chris won a Super Bowl for the Eagles. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see some Eagles fans coming out to the river to the end point. Um, in terms of like camera, news, whatever, like if that happens, cool, we'll deal with it. If it doesn't, it's probably our preference
right,
a little
right,
bit more. But that's something that's sort of like out of our control. So just not going to worry about it.
right. Awesome. That's great, man. So after you guys do all this, let's say you guys get to the end, you get it.
Hmm.
How long will it be before we get to see like the first video drop of, are you guys going to do like a full, like
I bet
one
on
video, or are you going
media,
to break it up?
I bet on social media you'll get some stuff like pretty much right away.
Okay.
Where, you know, the basic formula that we use for spreading our content is we have the audio podcast, but then we take clips from it, we blast them out on social media, and then we do like a long form video on YouTube.
Okay.
So like what my hope is that if we complete it successfully, we put some clips out on social media, maybe even put some of the stuff out there live if possible. That's something I still got to figure out.
That'd be great.
That'd be really cool. Maybe the end of it live.
Right.
And then once we have some time to turn around the footage and make sure we have everything well done and edited, you know, within a week or so, have a long form YouTube video out that would show the whole process. And I'm optimistic that, you know, if we do it and we're successful, that we can keep breaking records. You know, I was thinking in my head today as I was driving home from softball, I was like, man, it'd be cool to have the largest pumpkin armada. Like we have all these pumpkin farmers.
That would be cool.
Like once we learn how to carve them and do this journey successfully, I'd like to, you know, get 20 pumpkins floating down the Delaware.
Or what about, you know, catching the world's, you know, like the biggest fish caught from a pumpkin or something like that. You know what I mean? Like you can get some really crazy records. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if a guy can put his tongue to a fan and stop 20 of them in a row and get a record for it, surely to goodness, you guys can like catch a humongous 60-pound catfish from a pumpkin and that count for a record. You know what I mean? Like it really is endless. But I tell you what I would like to see for a record. I want to see the Long brothers and their daddy pick up one pumpkin. That's what I want to see, a world record of that. 3 men picking up one pumpkin.
How big a pumpkin? Let's see. I bet the 3 of them together could probably, if they had to, pick up about a 1,200 pounder.
That would be cool. That would be very, very cool. And I think they could set that for a record. I mean, there's not too many people out here lifting giant pumpkins by themselves. The other day, and I can send you the video of this, I can get it off Facebook and send it to you. There was probably 12 just pulling one.
Oh, wow.
Right. Now, granted, it's probably 1,800 pounds or so like that. But there was 12 of these guys pulling one pumpkin. Yeah. All right. Just trying to stretch the vine out because the vine was getting kinked. So I would love to see like 3 dudes pick up one pumpkin and see how big of a pumpkin they could lift. I mean, that would be fun.
There's all kinds of stuff you could do, like highest pumpkin dropped off a mountain, stuff like that. Be fun.
Yeah, right. You could drop one off of the tallest mountain, roll it down the mountain or whatever, right? Or maybe you could talk Chris into sleigh riding one down a mountain.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, because I know for a fact I can get one to last until Winter Place opens up. Winter Place is 15 miles from, not even 15 miles, is it? It's like 8 to 10 miles from me. Winter Place opens up end of October, I think, beginning of November. I can get one to last that long. If you can get him in one, I'll provide the pumpkin. You guys can get him to sleigh ride down it. I'll get the pumpkin for you.
That's a deal. I'll get him to wear a Santa Claus outfit.
Yes, that'll be great.
Actually, a bunch of the dudes on the show love the slopes, so we've been out to West Virginia. I haven't been to that particular spot, but that sounds cool.
Yeah, Winter Place is like there's Winter Place of Snowshoe. Winter Place is here in southern West Virginia. It's like right here at Gent. And so, I mean, it's literally just right out my back door. So it'd be no problem. Next year, if you guys want to do it, I'll grow a pumpkin especially for that. And you guys can take off down the mountain. That would be fun.
Maybe we can ski on some longboards.
Yeah, man. Hey, you know what? Now that would be some fun too. That would be a lot of fun. I mean, the possibilities are just endless, man. Really endless. Have any of you guys fell in love with the giants and seeing them and want to grow any of them?
I think that it looks too daunting to me. Like my knowledge deficit is too much to overcome.
Right.
In some ways, just from not like having the history of farming. And like one of the biggest things that I took away was just how much work it is. Like you got to treat these pumpkins like your baby almost. So I wouldn't say it's been appealing to grow it, but it's been appealing to learn about the passion of those who do.
Right. That's fair. That's fair. I can tell you this. You don't have to be a farmer or much of a gardener to really start growing. I know a lot of people who started growing them and they never had any kind of experience growing up
Yeah.
doing any of that stuff. They just started planting seeds and started growing them. So I mean, but there's so much different stuff that you guys, there's giant tomatoes. I mean, there's one guy
Yeah.
grows almost 18-pound tomatoes. So it's just really, really cool that you guys are like not involved, but that you guys are getting to see something that most people don't even know exists. Like something as big as this, and most people are like, "What? I don't know nothing about it." So it's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's just a good way to get in touch with like other people. I don't know. It's like it's a whole community that we didn't know about that we've just enjoyed exploring, and I'm not gonna leave it because I'm interested. Like I want to know who wins at the state
Right,
fair.
right.
I want to know what the weight is.
That,
Like all that stuff.
that's awesome, man. Well, I don't have really any other questions. I think we've really covered this thing, and that was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Appreciate you having me on. I know we'd love to. We're not too far from you, so we'd love to come out to the Heavenly Hills Homestead sometime and check it out.
Anytime y'all want, you're more than welcome to come. It's not a very big place. It's about 1 acre.
That's
so
all right. That's all you need.
It's not real big, but hopefully one day, in the very near future, we're looking at getting a bigger spot. There's several farms that are getting older, and the people are getting older, and they're going to sell them off, and hopefully we'll get one of those. And I can grow 8 giant pumpkins on 1 acre pretty well. You give me a whole acre to play with that my house and buildings and my animals aren't sitting on,
right?
And I'll grow 30 of them things in a year. Like cool. I mean, it's just that much fun. I couldn't imagine having that much land and just letting it sit and not having giant pumpkins growing everywhere on it.
Yep.
So it's a lot of fun, man. But yeah, you guys are more than welcome to come up anytime y'all want. And if you guys want to take one down a ski slope, you just let me know, and I'm your guy.
All right, man.
But if you don't mind, I'm gonna end this one, and then we'll wrap up on the other end of it, and we'll call it a night, man. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, y'all. So let me see here real quick. Get my stuff here. Let me see. So on September 19th, which is next Tuesday, we got Chad New from Colorado Giants coming on to talk to us. September 26th, we got Randall from Extreme Gardening and Travis Ginger, who holds the North American record at 2,560 pounds and probably going to have a world record this year. So we'll have them on September 26th. October 3rd, we got Yogi Hollow Farm. On October 11th, which is a Wednesday, we have Tony from Kettle Kitchen. October 17th, we got Acorn Creek Farmstead. October 24th, we got Seven Ken Homestead. October 31st is open. November 7th, 14th, 21st, 28th are open. December 5th is Enoch Graham. The 12th, the 19th, the 26th are open. So any of those open dates, if you guys want to get on here and do a live stream, you're more than welcome to. We don't care if you got a big YouTube channel, a little YouTube channel. You want to get on here and discuss what you do, I'd love to have you on. So, guys, it's been super fun tonight talking about this, and I'm very, very pumped to get to see these guys float a giant pumpkin down a river and hopefully break the world record. Matt, I appreciate it so much. You filling in for me tonight. That was great.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. You're a guest booking machine, by the way. That's a schedule.
I try to get them in there, man. I want to have it filled up so I don't have to worry about much. I can just go on cruise control, right? But man, yeah. Again, thank you again so much. That was wonderful. And guys, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time right here in the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia. See y'all.
Thanks, y'all.